Hey guys, it's Sam. Welcome back to Vlogmas. Today's video is the 5 most underrated books, in my opinion, that I've read in 2022. Don't mention my nails. If you do, you're homophobic. None of these are books that were released in 2022, I don't think, but these are all books that I read in 2022 and that I feel don't get as much hype as they maybe deserve. Some of these books might have like niche communities that really hype them. I just haven't seen them. This is just like, in my experience, books that are underhyped. First is This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. This is a YA first book in a duology. I have read both books in the duology. This one I do think is better. I rated this more of like a 4.25 stars. I didn't quite like the second installment as much, but they're still both good, and I feel like deserve more hype than they're getting. This follows our main character, Briseis. She was adopted and she has this like nature magic, but she doesn't know a lot about it because she was adopted. So her and her 2 moms run this flower shop in New York City, and they get approached by this woman who's like, hey, your biological aunt died and left you the family home. So then they go to, I think it's upstate New York, to this family home that is very like practical magic-esque. There's an apothecary and there's this like poison garden because like poison doesn't really affect her, and all these things are unraveling. She starts learning more about her biological family, and a lot of it is also connected to Greek mythology. I think the writing in here is really good. I think the family connections in this duology in general are awesome. There's a lot of sapphic relationships in here and just like bisexuality, but a lot of sapphic relationships specifically. We have nature magic, which I always love. Characters that are like immune to poison. I think poison's another sort of like magic combat system, whatever you want to call it, that I really like. I don't see a lot of, so I feel like I don't talk about it a lot, but poisoners, love a poisoner. And particularly in this first book, there's this like gothic aesthetic adjacent kind of thing going on, because like the creepy house, the mystery, things like that, and then a new way of looking at Greek mythology, because all the characters in this series, basically all of them, are black. So I think it's an interesting take on things that maybe we've seen before, but with a new spin. I really like Kaylin Bayron's writing, and I'm going to be interested to see what else she comes out with in the future. This is a definitely underrated YA series that's out right now. Next is Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdez. This is a fun little sci-fi series. I've only read the first book, but there's 3 books in this adult sci-fi trilogy. And this is really good for fans of Mass Effect, or any fast-paced sci-fi world. You have this main character who runs this like spaceship. She's like the spaceship captain, and she gets pulled into this thing. She needs to help her sister out of this mess, and she has to go on like all of these crazy missions. And there's just a ton of different aliens. There's a ton of different like worlds and things. It's very fast-paced, and it's probably not going to be for everyone in that way because it's so fast-paced. So I could not read this series like back to back, for example, because this book felt like 3 books worth of stuff happened in just this one, but it's so fun. There's psychic cats. There's a alien romance that is not like smutty necessarily, so if you like alien romance but you're not really into like alien erotica that's out right now, this I think you would really like. If you've played Mass Effect, it's kind of like a Garrus Thane hybrid romance, romancing like a shepherd. And this character is like a shepherd if they were less competent. Kind of more chaotic. So overall, really fun series. I'm going to continue the rest of the series hopefully in the new year. I really enjoy this. I think it should get more hype. I know sci-fi is a hard sell for some people, but if you want some like fun, rompy sci-fi, this. Another sci-fi, The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. This is the first book in another trilogy. I think all 3 are out now. I think the last book just came out at the end of this year. But this follows our titular first sister. She is part of this like priesthood where they're not allowed to speak, but they are, it's sort of Handmaid's Tale-esque in the way that these women are sort of like used, but it is part of the religion and they're supposed to be like exalted, but they're kind of not. This is all taking place in space. And basically her former captain was like, I'm gonna take you with me, and then he didn't, he betrayed her. So then she gets pulled in to spy on the new captain. And there are 2 sort of factions, Earth and Mars, and then Venus and I think Mercury. And she's sort of for the Earth and Mars side, kind of, in the way that like she's part of their religion. And then we have another character, Leto, and he is part of the Mars and Mercury side, and his former partner, who they're kind of like soul bonded almost, has gone missing, possibly betrayed them, and he's sort of figuring out what happened. And of course these perspectives are like eventually going to intertwine and stuff. So it's this politically driven space opera. There is a lot of action stuff in like close combat action if you're into stuff like that, and like cool weapons and things, but it is definitely still like within sort of, you know, like our solar system and like people fighting in like the far future. And this like religious aspect, which I always think is really interesting when done well in sci-fi. And there's some like sapphic gender stuff happening here as well. Just really interesting, very intriguing. One of those stories that kind of reminds me of like Red Rising, not completely in the, if you didn't like Red Rising, I think you'd still like this, but in the way that you're like, I'm so tense for these characters and I don't know what's gonna happen and I need to keep reading because I don't wanna put it down because you're making me nervous. That's kind of what this is. So I really enjoy it. I think it should get more hype than it does. Another YA, I'm going hard for the YA. These are like some of the only YA that I read this year and I actually really liked a lot of it that I read this year. I read very little. I will talk about that more in my like new year, after the new year sort of wrap up stuff because I'm still reading for this year. But another YA I really liked this year was Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. This is a standalone, but there could be more books in this series, but I know since Ashley Poston's more of like a B-list sort of author, you know, down list kind of thing, sometimes they don't necessarily push those authors' series and get them continued. So more people should read this so it can continue. It's written as a standalone though, with just like things that could be continued, right? And it follows Ceres. She is the daughter of the royal gardener and she's been best friends with the royal family. And years ago something happened where basically the wood that like surrounds their small kingdom did something to her. The wood tends to like taint people, corrupt people. You guys know I love that theme. And so she has this tie to like the woods and magic and things. And the king dies pretty suddenly and so his daughter, her best friend, has to rise up, but then something happens at that coronation. And so Ceres and her best friend, who's a fox, have to go and try to find the woman of the woods who apparently like gave them the power to hold off the wood in the first place, like the kingdom the power to do that. Meanwhile, everyone in the kingdom is corrupted by this evil woods. So we have like forest body horror, like spoopy creatures. I love forest body corruption. You guys know, I just really do. And this was done really well in here, like, especially for a YA, it was like very visceral. So if you're not into that, you're not gonna like this, but I'm into it. And then we have all this nature magic. We had this fox, and like, I will say, because I think you should know, the fox is not like maybe a fox, or maybe he is a fox, but like, the fox is like eventually a man at some point, and like, the tension there, real good. And just the way everything turns out, there were some twists and things that I felt like I sort of predicted but then wasn't sure about, but then the way it was executed was really good. Like when it turned out that I was correct, it was all really good. And there's things about this series that again could be continued. There's things at the end, there's like a couple different perspectives from characters that we didn't get to like see. That's like, oh, that could be threads and I would love to see those threads. So I highly enjoyed this. This was very fun. I think I read it in like 2 sittings. So if you're looking for a fun YA and you like forest shit like I do, you'll be into it. And lastly is one that took me forever to read, but I've been talking about it a lot lately because I just read it in October, November. The Once and Future Witches by Alex C. Harrow. I recently did a review for this, so I will link that on the screen. I think I've done reviews for a lot of these actually, so I'll try to link those if I remember. But this is a adult standalone historical fiction fantasy set around the time period of the suffragette movement and follows 3 sisters who are witches and are leading like a witchcraft movement. So good, the way that it intertwines fairy tales and fairy tales as magic and the sisters as the maiden, mother, and crone, which is a very witchy archetype. The way that the writing even is just like very lyrical and very witchy and like has a lot of beats that are almost like fairy tales. And there are 2 different romances in here that I really enjoy. Like there's a guy that is basically like worshiping the ground one of the sisters walks on, and there's a sapphic relationship for one of the other sisters, and just the way everything is done is really good. I really liked the audiobook as well. Listen to this on audio and highly recommend it. So yeah, this is one that like, I know Alex C. Harrow has been hit and miss for people, which is why I took so long to actually read this. But now that I have, I'm like, oh, this is the book by her that everyone should read. Forget 10,000 Doors of January. It's this one. So those are the 5 books that I think are the most underrated and more people should read of the books that I've read in 2022. Comment down below, let me know some books that you really feel are underrated that you read this year. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.